Everyone at the gate laughed at the old man. Minutes later, the Admiral was saluting him. "What kind of game are you playing here?" Commander Blake Matthews's voice cut through the humid Virginia morning. Sharp, impatient, he stepped closer to the battered gray pickup, idling at the main gate of Naval Station Portsmouth. His polished boots crunched on fresh gravel. His hand rested near his sidearm. Not threatening, just present. Behind the wheel sat an old man, 81 maybe older, weathered hands gripping the steering wheel loosely. Eyes fixed straight ahead on the naval vessels, visible beyond the checkpoint. He didn't look at the commander, didn't acknowledge him at all, just sat there, still as stone. Matthews exchanged a glance with his two junior security officers. Both looked uncertain. He was not. This old man was disrupting his gate, and disruptions got handled. "Sir, I need identification and base credentials, now." His tone left no room for discussion. The line of cars behind the truck was growing. Morning rush, sailors, contractors, families, all stuck, all watching. Matthews felt their eyes. Good, let them see protocol enforced. He was 38, fast-tracked through OCS, selected for base security command ahead of his peers. He knew the regulations, he enforced them. And this man, this relic in a truck that belonged in a salvage yard, he was violating every single one. "Sir, final warning. Provide valid identification and state your business, or I will escort you to base security for processing." The old man still didn't respond. Matthews leaned close enough to see inside the cab. Worn seats, faded dashboard, a leather jacket draped over the passenger seat, and on that jacket a patch. Simple design, black background, silver embroidery. A single downward-pointing arrow with a horizontal bar across the top. Like a hammer falling, Matthews pointed at it. "What's this supposed to be? Some kind of veterans club?" A few scattered chuckles from the growing crowd. One of the junior officers shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, maybe we should follow protocol," Matthews cut him off. "That's exactly what we should do." He turned back to the old man. "Out of the vehicle. Now, we're taking you to security for verification." Finally the old man moved. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into the glove compartment, pulled out an old leather wallet, held together with a rubber band, opened it, extracted a card, handed it through the window without a word. Matthews looked at it. His eyes narrowed. Military ID, but ancient. The photo faded to sepia, lamination cracked and yellowed. Issue date, 53 years ago. Matthews let out a harsh laugh. "This expired before I was born. You think this is valid?" He held it up for the crowd to see. "This is what happens when civilians try to bypass security." He tossed the card back through the window. "Get him out of the truck," Matthews ordered. "We'll sort this at headquarters." But in the back of the crowd, someone was watching with mounting horror. Petty Officer 2nd Class David Park, 24, Navy Intelligence Specialist. He'd seen that patch before, in classified briefings, in historical archives requiring special clearance. That simple hammer his stomach dropped. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and started making a call that would change everything. David Park didn't hesitate. He scrolled to a number he'd been told to use only for emergencies. Master Chief Sullivan, his mentor, 32 years in the Navy. The phone rang twice. "Sullivan, Chief, it's Park, main gate. Emergency situation. Commander Matthews is about to detain an elderly man." "Sir," the man has a patch on his jacket. Black shield, silver hammer pointing down. Silence. Then Sullivan's voice changed. Went cold, hard. "Describe it again." "Exactly." Park did. Described the confrontation. The commander's aggression. The old man's silence. The expired ID. Another pause. Longer this time. "His name. Did you get his name?" The ID said Thomas Dalton, Chief. Park heard something slam on the other end. A chair. The desk. "Do not let Matthews touch him. I'm making a call. Stay on the line." In an office 3 miles away, Sullivan was already dialing a second phone. His hands moved fast. It rang once. "Admiral Carson's office. This is Master Chief Sullivan. I need the Admiral immediately. Priority alert. Legacy Special Access Designation. Master Chief, the Admiral is in a flag briefing. I don't care if he's with the Secretary of the Navy. Get him, now. Tell him we have a situation involving a Silver Hammer designation. He'll understand." 10 seconds later a new voice came on the line. "Sullivan, what is it?" "Admiral James Carson, 2 stars, Commander of Naval Station Portsmouth, and the Hampton Roads Naval Complex. Sir, main gate. Commander Matthews is attempting to detain a civilian, elderly, presenting legacy military credentials. ID name, Thomas Dalton. Sir, he's wearing the patch. The silence that followed was profound. When Carson spoke again, his voice was barely controlled. The hammer patch. Yes, sir. Confirmed visual from Petty Officer Park. Carson's chair scraped violently. Get me a vehicle. Security detail. Alert the Marine detachment. I'm en route to the main gate. Sir, tell Matthews if he lays one hand on that man before I arrive, I will personally relieve him of command. Do you understand me, Master Chief? Yes, sir. I'm moving now. ETA, under 10 minutes. Keep that line open. Sullivan switched back to Park. Park, you still there? Yes, Chief. Admiral's on his way. Keep eyes on the situation. Do not intervene directly, unless Matthews tries to physically remove the subject. If that happens, you identify yourself and state that command authority has been notified and is responding. Clear? Clear, Chief. Park watched from his position in the crowd. Matthews was talking to his officer, preparing to open the truck door. The old man, Dalton, sat motionless, staring straight ahead, like he'd been through worse, like this was just noise. Park's grandfather had told him stories about quiet men who did impossible things, men who wore no medals because their actions were too classified to acknowledge, men who looked like anyone, until you knew what to look for. That patch, that stillness. Park realized he was watching a ghost, a legend made flesh, and Matthews had no idea what he was about to step into. Back at the gate, Matthews was feeling confident. He'd handled this perfectly, by the book. No deviation from protocol. His officers were approaching the truck door. The crowd had grown to over 100. Everyone filming. Perfect. Let them see this. Let them see what proper security looks like. Sir, please step out of the vehicle, one of the officers said, voice firm but professional. Thomas Dalton spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, gravelly, but it carried. Hammer 9. Matthews blinked. What? My call sign. You wanted to know. Hammer. Matthews let out a short laugh. Hammer 9? That from a video game. A few nervous chuckles from the crowd. But Petty Officer Park, still on the phone with Sullivan, felt ice in his veins. Chief, he just said his call sign is Hammer 9. Sullivan's response was immediate. Get to the front. Now. Keep Matthews away from him. Admiral's 2 minutes out. Park pushed through the crowd. Commander Matthews. Matthews turned, annoyed. Petty Officer. Return to your vehicle. This doesn't concern you. Sir, I think you should wait. I think you should follow order, unless you want to join him. Park stopped, jaw clenched, helpless. Then the sound of sirens cut through the morning. Not regular sirens. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. 3 black SUVs came around the corner. Emergency lights flashing, moving with purpose. They stopped just feet from the checkpoint. Doors opened. 6 Marines in combat utilities poured out, armed, alert. They formed a perimeter around the truck, and from the lead vehicle, Admiral James Carson emerged. 2 stars on his collar, 34 years of service, 3 combat deployment, and a face, carved from granite. He walked through the line of Marines, didn't look at Matthews, didn't acknowledge the crowd, walked straight to the driver's side of the truck, came to attention, and rendered a salute. Sharp, respectful, unwavering. Mr. Dalton, he said, voice clear, carrying, on behalf of the United States Navy, I apologize for the treatment you've received this morning. He held the salute, waited. Thomas Dalton slowly turned his head, looked at the Admiral, gave a small nod. Carson lowered his salute, turned to face the crowd. His voice boomed across the checkpoint. I'm going to tell you all exactly who this man is. Commander Matthews stood frozen, face pale, beginning to understand that his world had just turned upside down. Park watched from the crowd, heart pounding. The Marines held their positions, silent, professional, and Admiral Carson, prepared to deliver a lesson that no one at that gate would ever forget. The old man in the truck sat quietly, unchanged, like he'd seen this all before, like legends always do. Back at the gate, Matthews was feeling confident. He'd handled this perfectly. By the book, no deviation from protocol. His officers were approaching the truck door. The crowd had grown to over 100. Everyone filming. Perfect. Let them see this. Let them see what proper security looks like. Sir, please step out of the vehicle, one of the officers said. Voice firm but professional. Thomas Dalton spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, gravelly, but it carried. Hammer 9. Matthews blinked. What? My call sign. You wanted to know. Hammer 9. Matthews let out a short laugh. Hammer 9? That from a video game? A few nervous chuckles from the crowd. But Petty Officer Park, still on the phone with Sullivan, felt ice in his veins. "Chief, he just said his call sign is Hammer 9. Sullivan's response was immediate. "Get to the front, now. Keep Matthews away from him." Admiral's 2 minutes out. Park pushed through the crowd. "Commander Matthews." Matthews turned, annoyed. "Petty Officer, return to your vehicle. This doesn't concern you." "Sir, I think you should wait. I think you should follow orders, unless you want to join him." Park stopped, jaw clenched, helpless. Then the sound of sirens cut through the morning. Not regular sirens. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. 3 black SUVs came around the corner. Emergency lights flashing, moving with purpose. They stopped just feet from the checkpoint. Doors opened. 6 Marines in combat utilities poured out, armed, alert. They formed a perimeter around the truck, and from the lead vehicle, Admiral James Carson emerged. 2 stars on his collar, 34 years of service, 3 combat deployments, and a face carved from granite. He walked through the line of Marines, didn't look at Matthews, didn't acknowledge the crowd, walked straight to the driver's side of the truck, came to attention, and rendered a salute, sharp, respectful, unwavering. "Mr. Dalton," he said, voice clear, carrying. "On behalf of the United States Navy, I apologize for the treatment you've received this morning." He held the salute, waited. Thomas Dalton slowly turned his head, looked at the Admiral, gave a small nod. Carson lowered his salute, turned to face the crowd. His voice boomed across the checkpoint. "I'm going to tell you all exactly who this man is." Commander Matthews stood frozen, face pale, beginning to understand that his world had just turned upside down. Park watched from the crowd, heart pounding. The Marines held their positions, silent, professional, and Admiral Carson prepared to deliver a lesson that no one at that gate would ever forget. The old man in the truck sat quietly, unchanged, like he'd seen this all before, like legends always do. Admiral Carson's voice cut through the stunned silence. "You see this man and you see an old truck, a faded jacket, an expired ID." He gestured toward Matthews. "Your security commander saw a problem, a protocol violation, someone to be removed." Matthews stood rigid, sweat forming on his brow. "Let me tell you what I see," Carson continued. "I see a man whose service record is classified at levels most of you will never access. I see a man who operated in places that officially don't exist, who completed missions that were never written down." He pointed to the patch on the leather jacket, the black shield, the silver hammer. "That patch represents a unit that preceded modern special operations, a unit that operated during the darkest years of the Cold War, so classified it had no official designation, just a symbol." The crowd was absolutely silent now, phones still recording. The men who wore that patch were selected from the best operators across all services. Selection rate under 2%. Most didn't survive the training. Those didn't survive the training. Those who did became deniable assets. Ghosts. Carson's voice softened but somehow grew more powerful. "Mr. Thomas Dalton served with that unit for 14 years. His call sign was Hammer 9. He participated in operations that prevented escalations, that extracted assets under impossible circumstances, that kept this nation secure while the rest of us slept in our bed." He turned back to Dalton briefly, then to the crowd again. "Beirut, 1983. Does that mean anything to anyone here?" Silence. No one knew. 2 classified. 2 buried. A 6-man team went in to extract a compromised intelligence officer. The mission went wrong immediately. Ambush. 4 operators killed in the first 2 minutes. He paused. Let it sink in. Mr. Dalton and 1 other operator held that position for 9 hours. Outnumbered. Under constant fire. They called in close air support 3 times. Danger. When the rescue element finally reached them, they found 2 men, both wounded. Still fighting. Still protecting the objective. Matthews looked like he might be physically ill. The other operator received the Navy Cross in a closed ceremony. Mr. Dalton received nothing in writing, because officially the mission never happened. The men who died were listed as training accidents. The survivors were instructed never to speak of it. Carson's voice hardened. "So when you demanded his credentials, Commander, you were demanding documentation of service this government officially denies. When you mocked that patch, you mocked men who died protecting classified operations. When you ordered him detained, you attempted to arrest a man who has done more for this nation's security than most people will ever know." He stepped closer to Matthews. "Do you understand what you've done?" Matthews opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "I asked you a question, Commander." "I didn't know, sir." "You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't verify. You saw an old man and assumed irrelevance. Carson turned back to address everyone. Let this be a lesson. The most capable warriors often look the least threatening. True professionals seek no recognition, and the men who truly understand combat rarely speak of it. He faced Dalton again. Sir, you have my word. This will not happen again. Dalton simply nodded once. Then he spoke. Quiet. Clear. Admiral, the commander was doing his job, just needs better judgment. Don't end his career over this. The grace in those words hit like a physical force. As Admiral Carson stood beside the truck, Thomas Dalton's mind drifted. The humid Virginia morning faded, replaced by scorching desert heat. He wasn't 81, he was 20, crouched behind a crumbling wall in a compound that smelled of smoke and blood. The radio in his ear crackled. Hammer 9, hammer 5. I'm hit, can't move. Thomas looked across the courtyard, saw his teammate Martinez dragging himself behind a burned-out vehicle, blood trailing. Enemy fire raked the compound. AK rounds, RPGs, mortar impacts. They'd been in country for the extraction. 15-minute operation, quick and clean. It had gone wrong in under 60 seconds. 4 men down, 2 wounded. Asset already executed. Reinforcements were hours away. Hang on 5. Thomas said into his radio. Coming to you. -9. You won't make it. Save yourself. Thomas ignored him, loaded a fresh magazine, checked his grenades. Then he moved. Across open ground, through incoming fire, rounds snapping past. He reached Martinez, grabbed his vest, dragged him back to cover. You're insane. Martinez gasped, blood on his teeth. Yeah, can't leave you here. Who else would argue with me? They held that position, Thomas and Martinez, and when Martinez passed out from blood loss, he fired until his barrel glowed, threw grenades until his shoulder went numb, called airstrikes so close the concussion knocked him unconscious twice. When rescue arrived, they found him still conscious, still armed, still covering Martinez. The team leader, a Marine captain, how are you still alive? Thomas didn't answer. He was making sure Martinez got on the helicopter first. The memory faded. Thomas blinked. Back in Virginia, in his truck, at the gate. Admiral Carson was still talking, explaining things Thomas wished would stay buried. He touched the patch on his jacket, felt the rough embroidery. Hammer 9, the 9th man to earn it. The 9th ghost. Most of them were gone now, dead or disappeared or living under other names. Thomas was one of the last who remembered, who carried the story, and he'd hoped to carry them quietly. But Commander Matthews had made that impossible. He looked at the young commander, saw himself decades ago, full of certainty, full of fire, thinking he knew everything. It took years to learn otherwise. Years and blood and law. Maybe Matthews could learn faster, with guidance instead of destruction. That's what leaders did. They taught. They mentored. Even when it would be easier to destroy. Thomas had destroyed enough in his life. Enough enemies. Enough missions. Enough of himself. He was done with destruction. Time for something else. He waited for the Admiral to finish. Waited for the crowd to process. And he prepared to do what he'd always done. Survive. Endure. And try to leave things better than he found them. Even if that meant showing mercy to a man who'd shown him none. Admiral Carson finally turned his full attention to Commander Matthews. The younger officer stood rigid, face drained of color, sweat visible on his temples. Commander Matthews, Carson said. Voice formal now. Official, you are hereby relieved as head of base security. Effective immediately. Matthews's face went white. Sir, you will not speak unless directly questioned. Understood? Yes, sir. Master Chief Sullivan will escort you to my office. You will wait there. We will discuss your future in this Navy. If you have one. Sullivan stepped forward, expression grim. Commander, this way. Matthews hesitated. Looked at Thomas Dalton, opened his mouth as if to speak. But Thomas was looking away, staring at the ships in the harbor, giving nothing. Matthews followed Sullivan toward one of the SUVs. Walking like a man whose world had just collapsed, the crowd began to disperse. Slowly, reluctantly, still filming, still murmuring. This would be everywhere within hours. Carson remained beside the truck, took a breath, spoke quietly. Mr. Dalton, may I ask what brings you to Portsmouth today? Thomas finally looked at him. My grandson, he graduates boot camp next week at Great Lakes. Thought I'd visit here first, see if anything changed since my time. Your grandson is joining the Navy? Yeoman rate, if he qualifies. Smart kid, wants administration work. Carson smiled slightly. You must be proud. I am. Mr. Dalton, I'd like to formally invite you to a reception tomorrow evening. Officers Club. Just a chance for some of our leadership to meet you, to thank you properly. Thomas shook his head. Appreciate it, Admiral, but no. Don't do well with crowds. Never have. I understand. But sir, your service deserves recognition. My service was its own reward. I did what needed doing. That's enough. Carson studied him, then nodded. I understand, but the offer stands. Won't change my mind. But thank you. The Admiral stepped back, came to attention, saluted again. Thomas returned it, slowly, stiffly, but properly. Then he started his truck, the old engine rumbling to life. Mr. Dalton, Carson said quickly, one more thing. I'm updating our security database, adding a legacy access notation for your ID. You'll be cleared for base entry at any installation in this region. Advanced notification preferred, but you'll have access. Thomas smiled. Small, genuine. Appreciated, Admiral, but probably won't be back. He put the truck in gear, rolled forward through the check. The Marines came to attention as he passed. Silent tribute. Then he was gone, disappeared into traffic, leaving behind a story that would be repeated in ready rooms and security briefings for years, and a lesson that Commander Blake Matthews would carry for the rest of his life, if he was smart enough to learn it. 3 hours later, Blake Matthews sat alone in Admiral Carson's outer office. He'd been sitting for 2 hours and 47 minutes. He'd counted every one. No one had spoken to him. No one had explained what was happening. Just wait. The door finally opened. Admiral Carson entered, Master Chief Sullivan behind him, a captain from Naval Personnel Command following. Matthews stood immediately. Sir. Sit. He sat. Carson didn't sit behind his desk. Stood, arms crossed, looking down. Commander, do you understand why you're here? Because I attempted to detain Mr. Dalton, sir. Wrong. You're here because you failed at the most fundamental requirement of leadership: judgment, verification, respect. Matthews said nothing. You saw an old man, a beat-up truck, an expired ID. You made assumptions. You didn't investigate, didn't use available resources, didn't verify before acting. Carson picked up a tablet, tapped the screen. This is our security database. It took me 45 seconds to look up Thomas Dalton. 45 seconds. He turned the screen toward Matthews. See this notation. Legacy SAP designation. Contact installation commander before any security action. It's been in our system since 1998. Updated annually. He set the tablet down. Hard. You could have called Master Chief Sullivan. Called anyone in your chain. But you didn't. Because you were certain you were right. Sir. The ID was expired. He wouldn't provide current. He provided exactly what he had. You chose not to accept it. You chose not to verify. Carson leaned forward. Here's what happens next. You're being transferred to Naval Station Mayport, Florida. You will serve as Deputy Security Officer under Commander Reynolds. It's effectively a demotion. Matthews' jaw tightened. Yes, you will complete mandatory training on veteran identification protocols and cultural sensitivity. You will write a formal letter of apology to Mr. Dalton, and mean every word, and you will serve minimum 2 years before consideration for promotion. I understand, sir. I'm not fin. Carson's voice hardened. You embarrassed this command. You humiliated a man who served with distinction in ways you'll never fully understand. You created a public incident that's already viral. He paused. But Mr. Dalton asked me not to end your career. Said you were young, eager, that you needed to learn, not be destroyed. Matthews looked up, surprised. So I'm giving you one chance. One, to learn from this, to become better, to understand that the uniform doesn't make you superior to the people you serve. Carson straightened. Don't waste it. I won't, sir. Dismissed. Report to Master Chief Sullivan for out processing. You have 72 hours to check out and report to Mayport. Matthews stood, saluted, turned to leave. Commander. He stopped. Before you transfer, go see him. Mr. Dalton. Apologize in person. Not because I'm ordering you, but because it's right. Yes, sir. Matthews left, career intact, but ego shattered, and maybe that was exactly what he needed. 1 week after the incident, Naval Station Portsmouth implemented new security procedure. Officially, Enhanced Veteran Credential Recognition Program. Unofficially, the Hammer Protocol. Admiral Carson had personally overseen development, working with Master Chief Sullivan, VA representatives and military historians. The protocol was straightforward. First, all security personnel received training on historical military identification formats, including legacy credentials, unit patches, and insignia from past eras. Second, Any individual presenting military credentials, even expired, triggered an immediate database check before enforcement action. Third, a direct notification line to the installation commander's office for situations involving unclear veteran credential. Fourth, quarterly briefings on historically significant units, including declassified special operations groups and legacy programs. The program rolled out at Portsmouth first, then across Hampton Roads installations, then quietly throughout the Atlantic Fleet. It wasn't special treatment, it was proper recognition. That service took many forms. That capability didn't always look threatening. That the most important stories were often never told. Master Chief Sullivan taught the first training session personally. He stood before 200 security personnel in the base theater. A photo of the hammer patch displayed behind him. This is a Legacy Special Access Program designation, Sullivan began. Black shield, silver hammer. It represents a unit that operated from the early 70s through the early 90s. The unit had no official name, no public documentation. Men who wore this conducted operations in multiple theaters, operations that prevented conflicts, that protected assets, that advanced national security in ways that remain classified. He paused. Let it register. There are fewer than a dozen known surviving members of this program. Most live quietly. Most will never discuss their service. Most carry scars, physical and psychological, you'll never see. He advanced to the next slide. Other patches, other units, other designations. MAC-C The SUG, Studies and Observations Group, Phoenix Program, Intelligence Support Activity. These represent just some of the units whose members might appear at your checkpoint. Some with dated credentials, some with documentation you won't immediately recognize. Your job isn't to deny them access. Your job is to verify correctly, to treat them with respect, and to get proper guidance when uncertain. A young petty officer raised her hand. Master Chief, how do we confirm legitimacy? Couldn't someone fake these things? Sullivan nodded. Good question. That's why we have the database, the notification protocols, the verification procedure. You never act alone on uncertain credentials. You verify, you elevate, you get command guidance. He looked across the room. The lesson isn't let everyone through. The lesson is verify before you act, especially when dealing with individuals who served in ways most of us can't imagine. The training lasted 4 hours. Every security officer passed. Everyone left with new perspective, and everyone hoped they'd handle it right if they ever encountered someone like Thomas Dalton, because now they understood what was at stake. Not just protocol, not just security, respect, honor. The things that truly mattered. 4 days after his relief, Blake Matthews stood outside a small house in a quiet Virginia neighborhood. It had taken hours to find the address. Thomas Dalton wasn't in any public database. No social media, no digital footprint. Master Chief Sullivan had finally provided it, with a warning. He's private, Commander. Be respectful, be brief, be genuine. Matthews had rehearsed this 100 times. Now standing on the porch, every word had evaporated. He knocked, waited. The door opened. Thomas Dalton stood there, jeans and a flannel shirt, reading glasses hanging from a cord around his neck. He looked at Matthews. No anger, no judgment, just neutral. Commander, Mr. Dalton, sir, may I have a moment? Thomas studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside. Come in. The house was small, neat, everything arranged with precision. A single photo on the wall caught Matthews's attention. Young man in dress blues, probably Dalton's grandson. Coffee? Thomas asked. No thank you, sir. They sat. Thomas in a worn armchair, Matthews on the edge of the couch. Silence stretched. Finally, Matthews spoke. Sir, I came to apologize for what happened at the gate, how I treated you. There's no excuse. I was wrong. Thomas nodded slowly, said nothing. I let my ego override my judgment. I saw you as a problem instead of a person, and I'm sorry, genuinely sorry. Thomas tilted his head. Why are you here, son? Sir, Admiral didn't order this, did he? He suggested it. Didn't order it. So why come? Matthews took a breath. Because you defended me. After everything I did, you asked the Admiral not to end my career. I don't understand why. Thomas was quiet, then leaned forward. How old are you? 38, sir. When I was 38, I thought I knew everything too. Thought my way was the right way. Took years to learn different. He gestured toward the window. You made a mistake, big one. But you're here, owning, learning from it. That takes a different kind of courage. I should have known better, sir. Maybe. But now you do. That's what counts. Not what you knew then. What you know now. Thomas stood, extended his hand. You'll be a good officer, Commander. Just took a hard lesson to get there. Matthews shook his hand. Felt the strength still in that grip. Thank you, sir, for your service, for your grace, for this. Thomas just nodded, and somehow that was enough. Matthews left feeling lighter, not forgiven, he didn't deserve that yet, but understood, given he'd spend the rest of his career earning it. 2 weeks later, Thomas Dalton stood in the crowd at Naval Station Great Lakes, Recruit Training Command, graduation ceremony, thousands of families filling the drill hall. His grandson Ethan Dalton was somewhere in that formation of white uniform, one face among hundreds. Thomas wore a simple jacket, no patches, no insignia, just an old man watching his grandson become a sailor. The ceremony was traditional, formal. The commanding officer's remarks, the presentation of colors, the oath recited by hundreds of young voices. Thomas felt something tighten in his chest. Pride, memory, loss. He thought of the men he'd served with, the ones who never got to see their grandchildren, never got to grow old, never got to stand in crowds like this. He thought of Martinez, who died 6 months after that compound, not from wounds, but from infection the Navy doctors couldn't stop. He thought of the others, some dead, some lost, all ghosts now, and he made a silent promise, to remember, to carry their stories, to honor what they'd done. The ceremony ended, recruits dismissed, families rushed forward. Ethan found Thomas in the crowd, ran to him, hugged him tight. "Grandpa, you came, wouldn't miss it." Ethan stepped back, beaming. "What do you think?" Thomas studied him, the crisp white uniform, the earnest young face, the pride in his eyes. "You look outstanding, son. Your grandmother would be proud. I wish she could have seen this. She sees it. Trust me." They walked toward the parking lot, Ethan talking non-stop about training, about his company commander, about everything. Thomas listened, smiled, asked questions. As they reached the car, Ethan hesitated. "Grandpa, can I ask something?" "Always. Why didn't you ever talk about your service? Mom said you were Navy, but you never told stories, never wore your uniform, never mentioned it." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "Some things aren't meant to be stories, Ethan. Some things you just carry, quietly. But people should know what you did." Thomas shook his head gently. "People know enough. They know we served. That's what matters." He placed a hand on his grandson's shoulder. "But you get to write your own story now. Make it good. Be the kind of sailor who helps others, who leads with integrity, who understands the uniform isn't about you, it's about something bigger." Ethan nodded. "I'll try, Grandpa." That's all anyone can ask. They drove away from Great Lakes, grandfather and grandson, one career ending, another beginning. Thomas thought about the cycle, the pattern, generations serving, sacrificing, carrying the weight. It was a good weight, an honorable weight, and he'd carried it well. Hammer 9, mission complete. But the mission never really ends. It just passes to the next generation, and that was exactly how it should be.